During the past while, I've been making a few videos that focus in on the Algonquin people, the Algonquin nation, and specifically I had done a video on the Penobscot, who lived on the Penobscot River area, generally speaking. There's bigger, encompass more than just there. Then I did another video on the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia, my home province, one of the maritime provinces of Canada. And today I'm going to focus in on the Maliceet. It's not just going to be about the Maliceet, and it's not necessarily, a total history of the Maliceet, but a general basic view of where they lived and who they were and what they did in the past. They've been here for thousands and thousands of years, and then the Europeans arrived and changed a lot of things. But I'll just read you here. I should mention the picture is a Maliceet lady, and we see her sitting in front of her wigwam. Not a teepee, it's a wigwam. And this is a 1908 photo taken in the general area of Avondale, New Brunswick. And isn't it incredible how we can go back in time? It's hard to say what she's doing here, possibly posing for the photo and, proud of her wigwam and what have you. One thing that the Maliceet shared in common with all the Algonquin people, and I've drawn a lot of attention to this, the Glooscap, the cultural hero chief. And Glooscap, I discovered years ago, and I've mentioned in some other videos, that Glooscap is represented in the night sky by the Orion constellation. So I'm going to deal with that too during this video. But first of all, I'll just read you something here about the Maliceet people. The Maliceet are the indigenous people of the St. John River Valley and its tributaries, and their territory extends across the current borders of New Brunswick and Quebec in Canada and parts of Maine in the United States. Today, Maliceet people have also migrated to other parts of the world. The heart of their expansive territory in what is now New Brunswick in Maine, that's where it is, they have long been associated with the St. John area of New Brunswick. Their territory still extends as far as the St. Lawrence River. Their lands and resources are bounded on the east by the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia and on the west by the Penobscot people in Maine, Penobscot, Maine. And then we have other groups of that are nearby them too. We can't go into all the details. When the Europeans first came over, they discovered the Maliceet, it mentions, had walled villages. And they were very instrumental in harvesting corn, beans, squash, and tobacco. The women were very instrumental in collecting fruits, berries, nuts, and natural produce, and they processed these fruits and vegetables. The men did a lot of the fishing and hunting, and of course the children were all involved too in these different exercises of survival. And Samuel de Champlain, when he came to St. John, New Brunswick, in the harbor there, he noticed that this was the village of the Maliceet, and a very large one at that. At that time it was the headquarters, you could say, of the Maliceet, but later on, from what I understand, they moved up to the St. John River further up. So that's basically the story on that, and I'm going to take you to Google Earth now. Of course, I got Oak Island centered out here at the moment. A lot of my stories, it's like a needle and a thread. The thread goes through all my stories, and Oak Island has always played a big role because I'm interested in Oak Island. I grew up in Nova Scotia, born in Tatamagouche, and that's been a focal point for me for many years, and more so lately because of all the attention it's getting. We'll come back to that later if all goes well. I'd like to mention too, as we go over to St. John, New Brunswick, where the Maliceet originally had their headquarters, There was a time, here's St. John over here, Bay of Fundy. As a child, I was told I was connected to the Maliceet. The Maliceet blood was in our system, we could say, in our roots. And but I looked into that quite a few times over my lifetime, and I was convinced I was connected through family, through grandfathers and grandmothers. Eventually, I found that there was a mistake made, and there's no connection at all. There was a French name that got people assuming that we had a direct connection through marriage and all that. So that's gone, that whole thing. It took ages to solve it. So now I'm going to, there's St. John and the St. John River. And, we'll just take a long-range view here. So there we go. And then I'll take you to outer space, I guess we could say, show you the constellations. And should just take a second here. Just got to get something out of the way. Yeah, we just put the grid on here just for a second. There we go. And then I'm going to take you to show you the Orion constellation. And here we go. Isn't it amazing what we can do on Google Earth? Technology is incredible. How we can go to the outer limits of space, zeroing on planets and galaxies and stars just at the click of a button. Amazing. Now this only goes so far back, so I get my constellations a bit closer to them than what I wish. We'll see if we can find the Orion constellation down here. Shouldn't be too far away. Here it is. There's Orion right here. If I haven't already mentioned it clearly in this video, I did discover this in the oral tradition of the Algonquin. These would be known today as legends, that Glooscap is represented by the Orion constellation, and it probably was used as a map in the Maritime provinces as far down as Penobscot in Maine. But I'll go into that another time, not likely in this video. It's amazing how we can pinpoint where things are located. General area of Oak Island, everything's right here. We'll see if we can get some names that pop up. Here we go. There's Oak Island right here. We have the grids, we have the longitude and latitude lines. I'm not going to get into all the details of how that works. And then we have, Outer Ledge here. Here's St. John right here. So that just gives you an idea. We have the constellation once again. Let's go back as far as we can. Okay, once again, Orion is here. And I'm going to deal with that a bit more. And up here we have the Big Dipper, the Bear, and then we have the Little Dipper, and then we have the Polaris, the North Star. So I think that does it for that. We'll go back to Earth. Watch how fast we can go back down there. And here we have the St. John area in view. And I'm just going to put that down. I'm going to bring up a video here in a second. I'll explain this to you. And we'll put the picture away, and we'll bring this up. I'm going to explain this to you later a bit more. I'll just show you this video of a discovery I made in the Peggy's Cove area. This is one of two videos that I did several years ago when I returned to Nova Scotia from Austria. It has to do with the Peggy's Cove area of Nova Scotia. I made a discovery there in 1990 in the what's known as inland part of that area, Peggy's Cove. I returned in 2008 or so. Went back up into that area, and since then I made a few more discoveries, and a few friends of mine made a few discoveries. And one of these discoveries was the stone head that's in another video. This one's on YouTube, and there's another one showing the stone head that's on video, and it's believed, or on YouTube, and it's believed to represent possibly Glooscap. Now, it's unknown today who actually did this work in that area, Peggy's Cove, but it's suspected possibly the native people had something to do with this. We could think of the Mi'kmaq, who live in Nova Scotia, the Maliceet, there's all these different groups could have, one way or the other, participated in this project, but it's unknown. So until further investigation is done, all we can do is speculate. I do mention in here possibly a grave site or something like, cremation, but my view has changed somewhat since then, for various reasons, which I'll update you on in the near future. For now, we'll just run this video, give you an idea of just what's going on here. Okay, now I'm not too far away from what I refer to as a Glooscap head or carving. I'm not the only one that speculates along that line. That's really what it is, speculation, guesswork. It just happens to remind you of what Glooscap might look like. But I don't think these fences here, stone fences, were used for any animals. I believe it's probably some ancient grave site, 100 years old, 500 years old, 1,000 years old, 2,000, who knows. This needs to be studied. This video is going to be very brief. Once again, just wanted to give it on site. I'm not going to disclose the location because of various reasons. Damage could be done, as has already happened to the mystery walls. There's like mystery walls. And we have more of it here. And there we go. It actually walks over, but it goes right around in a circle. And so I don't really have much more to say about these because it's all guesswork. I mean, that's all I can do at this point is assume. But there's no, I can't think of any other logical reason for these being here. So that gives you a basic idea. I could go into more detail, but this one is not a good idea. So I think that's pretty well it for today, but there needs to be more research done. I'll leave you with these thoughts and hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm going to be moving around a bit from the Maliceet to the Mi'kmaq and possibly a few other subjects I'll tie in with Oak Island. The reason why I showed this video, there's another one. I made two of them. You can see them on YouTube. The other one, if you put in like Peggy's Cove Stonehead, Jack McNabb, you'll be able to see that stonehead that I mentioned here in this video. And my first discoveries in this Peggy's Cove area was made in 1990. Then I ended up being in British Columbia, then I moved back in about 2008 or so. I made a few trips back into Peggy's Cove, and I had other friends going in there. And between us all, we discovered many more interesting features like the stone walls you see here. But just above this location is the stone head that was discovered by a good friend of mine. And it's believed to represent Glooscap. And I believe that's a reasonable conclusion to reach. There's a lot that could be said about Glooscap. And but once again, the Maliceet were on the other side of the Bay of Fundy, and for sure there was interaction with the Maliceet and the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. For the longest time, the archaeologists seemed to not support the idea that the native people worked with stone and built things, but I guess that view has changed a lot. And we see that down through the New England states. There's lots of stonework down there, and a lot of credit seems to be pointing at the native people, the Algonquin people, for that construction work. This area I did mention could have been a burial site. Well, I'm swaying away from that a bit. I was thinking of cremation. I mean, it's all solid rock in there. You can't really, you can't bury anything, so it'd have to be a cremation. But I think it was more of maybe a food source of drying fish. I found a big boulder in 1990 with a hole under it where it might have been used for putting dried cod or fruit and vegetables. It's hard to know what it was used for. I crawled in under it. I know it was man-made. There was a stone wall that went around it that was built. But now I'm going to take you to a video of Glooscap. I've shown this in my other videos, and we'll go there now. And it shows the Orion constellation. And here we go. As can be appreciated, I'm talking about the Maliceet people who lived along the St. John River area of New Brunswick and Maine and various other locations that we're not going to be able to go into all the details about today. This video I like using when I'm referring into the history of the First Nations people of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and the New England states, Gaspe Peninsula, and such like areas. Glooscap was a well-known figure in the minds of these people. He was their cultural hero, chief. And I discovered in the oral tradition of the Algonquin people that the Orion constellation was viewed as being none other than Glooscap. Eventually I'll go into more details about how I was to derive that out of the legends that have been passed down through the ages to our day. This is the Orion constellation. What's going on here in the right hand corner, you can see the BC time phase and the AD time phase of thousands of years. And the movement that you see here of the stars is what's taking place over thousands of years, is that the universe is expanding and the stars are moving away. And eventually what you see here is the Orion constellation will no longer look like that thousands and thousands of years from now. And this movement of stars, what's known as the bow of the hunter, is being pulled back. You can almost think of that as a string now, and an arrow is going to be shot from it. As far as the rest of the Orion constellation is concerned, the big stars in the belt, the three of them, there doesn't seem to be much movement going on there, so we don't have to concern ourselves that much with all the details, and I'm trying to make this video short. What I'm going to do is read one of the Algonquin legends that the Maliceet would have been well aware of, as well as all the other people, such as the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia, the Penobscot in Maine, and other groups that made up this nation. The legend's called How Glooscap, Leaving the World, He Gave Gifts to Men. Now, the title is a bit longer than that. I had to shorten it up. Also, the legend I had to shorten up a lot for this video, because I don't like to have my videos too long. It says, now Glooscap had freed the world from the mighty monsters of early times. Wandered no longer in the wilderness. The Kwemoo terrified no man as it spread its wing, like the cloud between the sun. The dreadful Chino of the north devoured him not. More together in amity and peace. All nature mourns. His departure from Acadia, the master went away in life. Whoever would seek him might have one wish granted. Though the journey was long-lived, the trails were terrible, which must endure who would find Glooscap. There were still many men who had adventured to them. So that's a shortened form of a much longer legend. Now, Charles Leland recorded these legends, these oral tradition of the Algonquin people that have been passed down through the ages, through thousands of years, till the 1800s and until our day. But he recorded them on paper, and of course we can appreciate there was corruption mixed in with the two, because English and the French who wrote these legends down didn't fully grasp the full meaning of the, in this case, the Maliceet tongue, and made misinterpretations here and there, but nothing too serious, so we have to allow room for that. But he put in his footnotes. I'll just read some of the points he made at the footnote. He says, as regards the destruction of the giants, that was the monsters referred back there, by Glooscap, it may be observed that the same tradition exists among the Six Nations. Now, they put the time period that this took place was 1,250 years before Columbus discovered America. Then he goes on to mention a powerful tribe called, there's a very long name to it, but they were the stone giants, and who were cannibals overran the country and nearly exterminated the inhabitants. These stone giants practiced themselves in rolling on the sand. By this means their bodies became hard. They were known as the holder of the heavens and came down to earth as a giant, and being made their chief, led them into a hollow where he overwhelmed them with rocks. Only one escaped to the far north. The reader will recognize these as the Chinos, if I'm saying that right, Chenoos, and there's a few other names referring to them, who cover themselves with pitch and roll on the ground. But no one can deny that. Well, this narrative has much in common with the mythology of the Waikanaoki. It is much less like that. And he just goes into other points. We won't go into all these different words that he's using here. I'm not in the mood for translating everything, or the time for that. It just mentions that he suspects these giants might have come in across the Niagara of Ontario from Buffalo and crossed over from what we know today as the United States and made their journey by means of these falls. So that's just another angle of what he's talking about there. So I think we're going to leave that at that for now, and I hope you found this interesting. I thought this time I'd just tie in one of the legends, the oral tradition that the Maliceet would well know, as well as all the other peoples that made up the First Nation. So we'll move on to other aspects of this little story I'm telling you about the Maliceet people. So that brings things to a close. I hope you enjoyed that. I think we can end things now and maybe pick up on this subject again and extenuate the subject of the Maliceet. And we'll just close with a clock that I invented. I'm not finished with it, it's just in the early stages. A little bit of music with it I refer to as a Mi'kmaq clock, but it's Algonquin clock really.